Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Niche Cast. We are recording this on June the 4th. And today's podcast, we're going to be chatting a Blackcaps T20 World Cup preview ahead of their first game against Afghanistan on the weekend. That is a Saturday game, Aotearoa time. So we're going to be previewing the entire Blackcaps T20 World Cup campaign. We've also got Alex Paulsen. Seems like he's got a new deal over in England. Matt Garbett's got a crazy promotion story that we need to update. The football Ferns have been losing to Japan, but that's right, because Japan's much better than the football Ferns. Busy round of Kiwi-NRL football as well, with the Dragons. They got a win over James Fisher-Harris. Oh, Moses Leota was injured, so we'll keep some eyes on that, but Preston Ricky. You got a good experience of Preston Ricky as well. He made his debut for the Panthers. So we got some pretty impressive Kiwi-NRL performances. And I do have a little wrinkle that I want to suggest about the Aotearoa Warriors and their pipeline. And we've also got our regular dose of an NBL basketball recap. We're going to be doing our musical album review blog post as well over the next few days, and I did highlight the upcoming projects of Christoph L. Truento, Dubs from the Neighborhood, and also Big Hit with Hit Boy and The Alchemist. Both of those albums projects were released, and they are absolute bangers. Christoph L. Truento's from Aotearoa, so anyone who loves a bit of Aotearoa music, make sure you check out Christoph L. Truento, Dubs from the Neighborhood. It slaps, it bangs, it is absolutely glorious Aotearoa music. And Big Hit, the Black and Whites project with Alchemist and Hit Boy, is pretty damn impressive hip hop as well. Any musical jam you want to highlight, update? Because I think we did it last week. So if you've got any new music, or if you've got some crystallized ideas about the latest albums, what do you reckon?
Yeah, still working through a couple of them albums that I have planned to listen to, and I'm trying to listen to. There is the one, I mentioned a few last time. I will add, let's go with, there's a duets album by a couple of Kiwi artists, Matt Joe Gow and Karen Fields. So Matt Joe Gow is from Dunedin, Karen Fields is from Te Kuiti, and they're both sort of, I guess, like country folk style artists. Both of them also moved to, I think, Melbourne to kind of get their musical starts, and they've done an album together of songs that they wrote together. And it's very good. Like, it's one of them nice things where you get a duo whose strengths complement each other. And yeah, the album is called I Remember You, and they, I think, are touring around the country right now as we speak on the back of that album. So that one, Matt Joe Gow and Karen Fields. So shout that one out. That's definitely going to be in the album jukebox.
Beauty, and you can read about that on our website, theniche-case.com, as well as a deep dive into the Aotearoa Warriors victories and pipeline happenings and big crowds. We've got a full-on Blackcaps statistical preview, got Kiwi-NRL spotlights for Preston, Ricky, Keano, Kinney, Nofahu, White, and the rest. We've even got a yarn about Modi Maor and the New Zealand Breakers, and lots of other stuff that you can read on our website, theniche-case.com. And every Thursday we record our subscriber podcast, which is a bonus for the Patreon whānau, or the generous folks supporting us through Patreon. We appreciate you. And so we deliver an extra podcast on Thursdays, which will probably just go deeper into the Blackcaps T20 World Cup campaign. Might touch on a few Kiwi-NRL team lists, the Warriors weekend preview, and anything else that pops up between now and then. So you can check out our subscriber podcast if you support us through Patreon. Join the Patreon whānau. The links are in descriptions and everywhere else you need them to be. And if you do want to support us, you can buy us a coffee. You can upgrade your free Substack subscription to a paid Substack subscription, but you don't need to, because every Monday and Friday we send out our newsletter via Substack, thenishcase.substack.com, and that's just full of Aotearoa sporting information. To be honest, best New Zealand sports newsletter in the world, because you're not getting Warriors, football, basketball, cricket, and other bits and bobs in that fashion anywhere else, let alone the website thing, let alone Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you want. I mean, heck, we're out here. We even got the clips on TikTok of Aotearoa sporting excellence. So big up everyone who loves Aotearoa, and big up everyone who loves Aotearoa sport. And we always start our podcast with a dose of mindfulness.
Yeah, the mindfulness is being tested today because I'm trying to get through a podcast without my computer blowing up, as the listener can no doubt hear it humming away in the background. But this one is from Khalil Gibran, and unfortunately, I took a photo on portrait when I meant to have it on thing, so I keep turning my phone to see it, and it flips around. But it goes, "I discovered the secret of the sea in meditation upon the dewdrop." Very as above, so below areas on that one.
Yeah, I can't even link it to the as above, so below. I've got no idea what you just said. Something about the sea and a dewdrop. The dewdrop becomes the sea. It is part of the sea.
Well, a dewdrop is like it's a drop of water, right? And the sea is a whole lot of drops of water. So you understand one drop of water, you understand the entire sea by, I don't know, process of meditation, apparently.
Yep, I'm just going to roll with it. But I will also add, if you want to help us get a new laptop, old mate over there, myself, some new recording equipment, join us on Patreon, make a donation through Buy Me a Coffee, jam a paid Substack subscription, and help us upgrade the old podcasting equipment, because we're just keeping it gutter in the trenches, just focusing on the content, and we're doing our best. So if you can support us and help us turn this dewdrop into an ocean of Aotearoa sporting wizardry. Speaking of wizards, the Blackcaps are World Cup wizards, and as we've said many times over the past few years, Blackcaps always make World Cup semi-finals. I might just have to pull this up just to confirm what kind of semi-final streak we are dealing with. Because the Blackcaps just roll through World Cups and they make the semi-final. Sometimes they make the final. Pretty consistently, they're going to make the semi-final. So let's check in with the ODI World Cup. The Blackcaps have made 5 consecutive semi-finals: 2007, 2011, 2015, 2019, 2023. 2015 and 2019, they made the finals. So we've got 5 consecutive ODI World Cup semi-finals. And we have 3 consecutive T20 World Cup semi-finals. So you've got this cricket team, and they are basically an automatic World Cup semi-finalist, ODI World Cup semi-finalist, or T20 World Cup semi-finalist. And I've been listening to a lot of cricketing podcasts over the last week or so, Test Match Special, the cricketer, the grey cricketer, whatever you want to throw out there. And New Zealand doesn't exist. New Zealand's just a team, somehow they're always in the mix. No, we're always in the semi-final. Regardless of population, regardless of IPL status, regardless of how trendy your favourite cricketer is or isn't. New Zealand has made 5 consecutive ODI World Cup semi-finals, and in this format, the T20 format, they have made 3 consecutive semi-finals at the T20 World Cup. They did make the final in 2021, where they lost to Australia. So Just going to put that out there that New Zealand is the best cricketing nation in the world, considering our population size, kg for kg, punch above our weight, the underdogs on the up. That's what the Blackcaps do. Now we're heading into this World Cup, and semi-finals, that's the benchmark. Because when you're as good as New Zealand at cricket, you aim in for the semi-finals every tournament. We don't shit the bed and have a big review. And we don't shit the bed and not qualify for World Cups. That's not what the Blackcaps do. They just make the semi-finals. Yesterday in the newsletter, via Substack, I did lay out 3 reasons for optimism. And this optimism isn't about making the semi-finals, because that's probably going to happen. Like, history suggests the Blackcaps will make the semi-finals. This optimism is about winning the T20 World Cup. Because if there's any negative you can paint against the Blackcaps, it's that they don't win the World Cups. Well, they were screwed out of the 2019 World Cup victory, and they also won a World Test Championship final, the first ever World Test Championship final. So, I mean, they're still doing all right, you know? It's not like they just make the semi-finals and bow down to the folks who think they run cricket. We all know who they are, and they pretend like other countries don't exist. Unless you're going to the USA and you want a bit of that USA dosh, then you're going to big up USA cricket. England, Australia, India. Aside from Australia, they aren't as good as New Zealand. So how are the Blackcaps going to win this T20 World Cup? I wrote down experience. Let me have a look here. And it's quite interesting because Trent Boult's only played 57 T20 internationals. So who's played more T20 internationals than Trent Boult? Kane Williamson, Daryl Mitchell, Glenn Phillips, Mark Chapman, Jimmy Neesham, Mitchell Santner, Ish Sodhi, Tim Southee. They've all played more T20 internationals. So and even Lockie Ferguson. Players who have played more T20 internationals in this squad than Lockie Ferguson. We've got Finn Allen, Devon Conway, and all the others I read out who have more than Trent Boult. Trent Boult's played 57 T20 internationals. Lockie Ferguson's played 38. That tells us what we need to know about how the Blackcaps rest and rotate their T20 international squad. However, every player in this squad, except for the young phenom Rachin Ravindra, has played at least 100 T20 games. So Rachin Ravindra's played 66 T20s. And what does he do? Well, he just dominated the ODI World Cup with a strike rate over 100 and then had a strike rate over 160 in the IPL. That seems useful. Players who have played over 200 T20 games. Kane Williamson, Jimmy Neesham, Glenn Phillips, Daryl Mitchell, Ish Sodhi, Tim Southee, Trent Boult. But I think the easiest way to slice that up is just saying everyone except for Rachin Ravindra's played 100 T20 games and Rachin Ravindra's the young phenom. So there's a lot of experience there, righto? Like we've got guys who have played all around the world. They've played a lot of games from New Zealand. They've played a lot of games in various formats. And to be honest, many of these dudes played a lot of World Cup games. So that seems useful. I've also heard like some teams, they're thinking like, how are we going to get a lefty into the lineup? We've got too many right-handers. We need a left-hander. We need to have a left-hand, right-hand combination. The Blackcaps batting unit. So yeah, shout out Ish Sodhi, Tim Southee, Matt Henry, Ferguson and Boult. They're all right-handers. Not too worried about the left-hand, right-hand combination at the tail end side of things here. The Blackcaps squad is basically split half and half lefties, righties. So right-handers in the batting lineup, you got Finn Allen, Kane Williamson, Daryl Mitchell, Glenn Phillips, and then the bowlers. Lefties, we got Devon Conway, Rachin Ravindra, Mark Chapman, Michael Bracewell, Jimmy Neesham, Mitchell Santner. So you don't need to manufacture any lefty-righty partnerships. You don't even need to tinker with the order, I don't think, because, I mean, Conway, Ravindra, like all the lefties are competing for first 11 spots. Especially in that middle order where you're going to have Chapman, Bracewell, Neesham, and Santner. That's pretty interesting. So we got this variety. We got lefties, righties. We got a lefty seamer. We got a fast seamer in Lockie Ferguson. And we've also got 3 pretty decent spinners. The Blackcaps can roll out 3 spinners, at least 3 spin options in any first 11 combination you want to name. They can have Santner, Sodhi, and Bracewell in the same team. They can have Santner, Bracewell, Ravindra, and Phillips. Like, there's a lot of spin options in that squad. And what I think is going to happen is the strongest Blackcaps first 11 will feature Trent Boult and Lockie Ferguson, which is pretty decent seam duo. And then you can play the 3 spinners as well as other spin options, maybe even a bit of Jimmy Neesham as a seamer. He's talking up the death bowling. He might bowl an over or 2 at the death in this World Cup. Out we'll see Daryl Mitchell, but I think it's more likely we'll see Glenn Phillips and Daryl Mitchell, but I think it's more likely we will see Rachin Ravindra than Glenn Phillips bowling. So we got the lefties, we got the righties, we got the spin, we got the seam, we got the sluggers, we got the glue guy, Kane Williamson. Don't worry about his strike rate. He's just cruising along because Finn Allen's going to have a whack, Ravindra's going to have a whack, Mitchell's going to have a whack, Phillips is going to have a whack, Chapman has a whack, Bracewell has a whack, Neesham has a whack. There's a lot of whackers, and Williamson. And then Devon Conway doesn't have a monster strike rate, but we've seen Devon Conway score very quickly in Rachin Ravindra fashion around the world as well. The last reason for Blackcaps optimism is X Factor. And in true Aotearoa sporting style, my X Factor are Kiwi things. Fielding. Glenn Phillips and Mitchell Santner, probably the best fielders in the competition or in the discussion. And the Blackcaps, as we know, they will be one of the best, if not the best fielding team at this World Cup. Planning, preparation, there's a lot of chat. They're not playing any warm-up games, and that may be tricky, as we'll discuss in a jiffy, but it doesn't mean they haven't been preparing for a matchup against Afghanistan, the matchup against the West Indies. Why do the Blackcaps always make the semi-finals of World Cups? Because they're always pretty good in the field, and they've always got good plans to adapt to conditions and game scenarios. In this tournament, I believe that's an X factor. We've seen it before. We've seen how useful the Blackcaps planning, preparation, intangibles can be, and how that differentiates how that differentiates New Zealand from other teams who have bigger hitters, faster bowlers, trendier cricketers. But as I also said, Finn Allen's going to have a whack. Like, these dudes are not going to rotate the strike. Ravindra just came off that World Cup where he scored with a strike rate over 100. He's going to come out blazing boundaries. Mitchell's going to be hitting straight down the ground. Glenn Phillips, most exciting cricketer in the world. He's there. So I think between experience, variety, and X factor is a pretty compelling case that the Blackcaps can win this World Cup. But first, we're just hoping for a semi-final stage. That is the baseline for how this Blackcaps team performs. But as far as opening us up to hope and optimism that they can win the World Cup, I have convinced myself they can win this World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how much convincing we needed. It's like the um the the track record is there, and they seem to have a more stable just the the variations that you laid out there in that squad. Like, just things seem to be pointed in the direction of the Blackcaps being extremely competitive here, and the fact that once again we're entering a World Cup where anywhere you look outside of Aotearoa, and none of the coverage is talking about the Blackcaps as being contenders again. It's just this is the thing that's absolutely like I've kept an eye out for this over the last week. I've really like tried to take notice of this stuff, and it's the same as ever. It's like I get that you can look at the Blackcaps as being like from an outsider perspective, you can look at them and say like they're the team that's always close but not quite there kind of thing. I understand you can like have that perspective. I don't know if it's fair because they've made finals. You know, they've won some of these semifinals. They basically won the 2019 World Cup without actually winning it. They have a Test championship. It's not like they haven't delivered good, strong performances in a lot of these important knockout games. But I can understand that perspective. I could see why someone who's not following them closely enough would think that. But it's just weird that the go-to angle seems to be like this will be the year where they don't quite make it kind of thing. It's like it's almost taken for granted this aspect of it's just I don't know. I find it confusing, and I find it not even like annoying at this stage because it happens every single time. It's not annoying. It's almost like an experimental, like, yeah, what do you know? There we go again, kind of thing. But I do kind of actually like whenever that it's clockwork. It's before every tournament. It's the Blackcaps come in underrated, and then they make the semifinals. I guess the main reason it's not annoying is because I also, once you step back from that and think about it, you start coming around to these angles of like, well, they don't, I guess we're just going to catch them off guard again. I guess the Blackcaps are underdogs once more. Like they're not even trying to be underdogs, and they just become underdogs. It's a strange experience, but it's one we seem to go through every time. And just because they got a really stacked, like solid, what looks like an incredibly good T20 squad, arguably the best T20 squad they've taken to one of these tournaments for the last few times, and then made the last three semifinals and one of the finals. Just because they got a stacked squad doesn't mean they're gonna there's no guarantee of success at any point. Anything could go wrong. They just have a bad day at the office in T20 more than any other format that can be the case. But we're better set than most of these other nations. And you keep seeing things of predictions having the Blackcaps like as the 6th or 7th or 8th favorite. And like this is madness. But it's madness that probably works in our favor. So I don't want to get too upset about it,
I've come pretty far in my perception of Rachin Ravindra. Obviously, following domestic cricket closely, Rachin Ravindra is a really good cricketer, very promising cricketer. But there wasn't a lot to suggest that he would explode at the ODI World Cup in the way he did, with a strike rate over 100 throughout the whole tournament. That was pretty bonkers. And a lot of the coverage I've seen about the Blackcaps, he's not even mentioned. And that is also interesting because he had a pretty decent IPL. And you'd think the New Zealand player who there weren't, Mitchell played a few games for Chennai as well. And aside, Trent Bolt played a lot of games, but Rachin Ravindra was one of the most consistent IPL players. So there's people will take the IPL buzz with them to any tournament. There's a pretty big gap between the IPL and T20 international cricket, I think. And we'll find this out during the tournament. That's just a hypothesis. I don't see a lot of crossover because the rules are different. Conditions are different. The players are different. So to assume that what happens in the IPL is going to happen in T20 international cricket is pretty silly. But even then, Rachin Ravindra was a superstar at the ODO World Cup, was pretty solid at the in the IPL, but no one's mentioning him as a possible star of the T20 World Cup. And I'm sipping the cordial. I'm sipping the Raro. Because Rachin Ravindra, I've got him as opening the batting with Finn Allen. That's how far into the Rachin Ravindra hype I am. Because he's an absolute phenom. And my strongest team has him opening the batting ahead of Devon Conway, which means I'm willing to give the wicket-keeping gloves to Finn Allen. Because I want Rachin Ravindra opening the batting with Finn Allen. That's how far my appreciation for Rachin Ravindra goes. And I've also got the strike rates here. Of all the Blackcaps bowling options, and you'll hear a lot about strike rates during this T20 World Cup. Kane Williamson's batting strike rate's too low. Who's got the most efficient wicket-taking strike rates in the world? Well, anything below 20 as a bowler is pretty damn useful, and only one bowling option, or two bowling options in the squad have bowling strike rates over 20. One of them's Glenn Phillips, 43.5. The other one's Rachin Ravindra at 20.1. So that's barely over a strike rate of 20. The rest of them, they're all below 20. Jimmy Neesham, 18. Michael Bracewell, 13.4. That's the third spinner, and he has the best bowling strike rate in the squad for T20 international cricket. Mitchell Santner, 18.6. Ish Sodhi, 17.3. Matt Henry, 18.3. Tim Southey, 17. Lockie Ferguson, 15. Trent Boult, 17.4. Those are all very impressive bowling strike rates, and I'd happily put any of those, combinations of those bowling strike rates against any other team in the world. Because the dudes like Neesham, Santner, Sodhi, Southey, Ferguson, Boult, they have those strike rates over a pretty hefty sample size. And they're all screw 20. They're all below 19. As well as the bowling strike rates. We got Finn Allen, 164. Glenn Phillips, 144. Jimmy Neesham, 156. And then you've got the snail's pace. Devon Conway, 129. Kane Williamson, 124. Daryl Mitchell, 139. Mark Chapman, 133. Even a little bit deceiving here with the old beast. Batting strike rate of 125.5. Anyone who's seen Michael Bracewell bat, you know he can up the ante higher than that. And the batting strike rates, even through the bowlers, there's only two dudes who have strike rates below 100, which you would expect in a T20 team. But it's not like every bowler is going to be able to whack boundaries with a strike rate over 100 in 50 T20 internationals. Mitchell Santner, 122. Ish Sodhi, 104. Matt Henry, 120. Tim Southey, certified six-hitter, 140. And then Lockie Ferguson, 87. Trent Boult, 90.5. But we know it'll be fun to watch Trent Boult bat, so we don't need to worry about its strike rate. That is to say, there will be a lot of strike rate chat throughout this World Cup. I think the pitches and the quality of bowlers is going to ensure that maybe the totals aren't as big as many would believe, which might mean the strike rates aren't quite as big as many would believe. We've got a bowling attack that all operate below a strike rate of 19 with the ball. And I mean, most of the top order batters are over 130. The lowest is Devon Conway's 129. Then we get to Bracewell, 125. But we know he's got a far higher ceiling than that. So I've rolled out some reasons for optimism. And I think the strike rates need to be included in that. And that's kind of goes into the general X factor. Like, these dudes take wickets and they smack boundaries. Seems useful in a T20 World Cup, and I think you can see a compelling case for Jimmy Neesham to be selected in the first 11, given his strike rate efficiencies. But everywhere else, you look, that's why I'm high on Radradra. He's got a bowling strike rate of 20, which is aligned with the rest of these dudes who are below 19. So I don't like. Yeah, this is just why I feel good about the Blackcaps. Let me paint it that way. I feel good about this Blackcaps team because, like, whatever angle you want to attack it from, fielding, experience, variety, or just pure T20 strike rates, like, they do pretty well in every aspect, and I think that's going to serve them well in a tournament where you're playing funky opposition, you're playing in a few different grounds, although we do know the Blackcaps will be sticking solid in Guyana, I believe, for 3 games after they play Afghanistan. What are your thoughts on the strike rates? Like, do you have any thoughts on those bowling strike rates below 20, around 20, below 19, and or the batting strike rates? Because again, T20 cricket, you're going to hear a lot about strike rates, and I think this is where the Blackcaps, this might be where perception doesn't match up with reality.
Yeah, I think that's completely true because I don't know, you can see that in the way that Williamson has talked about a lot, where it's as though he's some kind of weakness in the side as opposed to being the linchpin in a team full of powerful hitters who just ties it all together. That's first of all like an essential role within a good T20 team is to have someone who can do that and someone who can rotate the strike and hold the innings together, make sure you're getting partnerships and all this. And also, it's not like he's slow. Like, he can score off every boundary. Sometimes he takes his time getting in a little bit, but he can score off every ball. I mean, sometimes he takes his time getting in, but he's still we've seen Kane Williamson accelerate as well. But he also doesn't have to be a guy who scores at 140 plus strike rate because everybody else in the top 7 around him is capable of doing that. And at least a couple of them probably will in any given game. Like, that's not a weakness in the team. That's the strength in the team. That's a dude who allows those other guys to be as destructive as possible. And when you look through there, like, it seems stacked with power. Like, there's power at the top of the order, there's power in the middle order, there's power low order. The tail enders can all smack 6s. Like, all of those guys are gonna, if you need, a boundary off the last ball of an innings and you're 8 wickets down or something, and I don't know, Ish Sodhi or Matt Henry or Tim Southey or Trent Bolt even, or whoever is coming into bat, like, there's still a chance because those guys can clear the fence, let alone hit it. Like, there's power throughout the batting order, and based on those bowling strike rates, there is wickets throughout that bowling lineup as well. I think that's the one aspect where I'd say, like, because I expect the batting power to translate, whether the bowling efficiency and just being able to take that many wickets, not just tying up ends, but getting guys out, whether that translate is one where I might have a few reservations. We'll see how that goes in different conditions, because I think a lot of those figures are probably a little bit home heavy, or maybe some of our so some of the away tours that the Blackcaps have had in T20 cricket specifically in the last couple of years haven't been of the they're not going to Australia to play 5 T20s kind of thing. They're going to play European tours and playing against Scotland and Ireland, and maybe a second string team going to Pakistan or Bangladesh kind of thing.
That's the thing. Many of the best players aren't playing those tours.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it exactly goes both ways. Like, many of those guys aren't playing on those tours, so their numbers aren't skewed by that. But also, like, there's the competitive aspect of when they are. But I mean, how do you combat that if that's an unknown that you're not sure? Will the bowling lineup be as efficient in these conditions? Well, the best way to be able to trust going into a bit of an unknown factor is to have experience. And guess what? This team's stacked with experience. You already rolled out how that's the case as well. I just don't I don't see a weakness in the makeup of this Black Cap squad, which is also we know going to be one of the best fielding and tactical teams going around. Like they're not going to be caught off guard in that aspect. Like I think maybe in the past you could say some of those previous Blackcaps T20 World Cup incarnations were maybe a few too many of their test players kind of thing, where it's like we'll pick the best 11 cricketers, but maybe not necessarily specific enough to the format. Here, I think you've still got most of their test squad there. It's just that those test players, this particular batch of test players, are more aggressive, or at least they're capable of going through the levels in the different formats a little bit more. The strike rates tell you that story, but I think that's that perception and reality thing again, is maybe in the past, the Black Caps haven't had so much destructive power and wicket taking ability. Asterisk on the wicket taking ability for reasons I just mentioned, but they kind of do right now, and that is absolutely getting slept on, I think, heading into this T20 World Cup.
Something else that may be being slept on is the Black Caps went to Pakistan a few months ago, 2-2 with a weakened squad. The Black Caps went to England last year. What happened there? 2-2. They also went to Pakistan last year. 2-2. Like those, like you're saying they take weak squads to tour weaker nations, and I'm saying it's a depth group and all this other stuff. Well, they've gone to Pakistan twice and drawn series in Pakistan, and everyone loves England. England are the big donnies of international cricket, despite doing a review every couple of years. And we just went 2-2 over in England. So I know there's there's certain results that you can look at overseas and be like, well, the Black Caps are pretty competitive in T20 cricket overseas as well as New Zealand, apart from when they play the actual big donnies of global cricket, which is Australia. But let's zone in on this first game, which will be against Afghanistan. Well, this one's in Guyana. So then they go to Trinidad, I believe, for their next 3 games. And by the looks of it, this is going to be on the same pitch, same ground as Papua New Guinea versus the West Indies. Now, what happened there? 136 for 8, 137 for 5. Let me just roll into all the results. How about all the results? Canada, USA, 190s. That's in Dallas, so maybe a few runs in Dallas. Then you have Papua New Guinea versus West Indies, 130s, below 140. Oman versus Namibia. Well, that went to a super over with scores of 109. South Africa just rolled Sri Lanka for 77. 4 games, and there's 1 game with scores over 140. That seems interesting, and specifically Papua New Guinea versus the West Indies, which will be the same ground as the Black Caps versus Afghanistan. And despite all this optimism, besides big up in Aotearoa cricket, it's a pretty tricky start against Afghanistan. As we discussed on our subscriber podcast last week, Afghanistan have the spin, they've got some power. I think the Black Caps have an advantage with their fielding, their planning, their preparation, and that will be crucial in ensuring that they don't get upset. There's always upsets and underdog stories at the World Cup, but New Zealand aren't really the victims too often. Hence, you make the semi-finals of every World Cup. They play against Afghanistan. I am fascinated by this matchup. And then you get into the game against West Indies. Black Caps probably need a win from either of these 2 games. Hopefully 2 wins to get the confidence flowing. What is your first 11 for this game against Afghanistan?
Um,
Well, let me fine tune it a bit. Do you have Fenelon and Devon Conway opening?
I mean, I won't be surprised if that's the case, but I am pretty swayed by the possibility of the Allen Ravindra opening partnership. I quite like to see that. Um, and to be honest, kind of trust Rachin Ravindra to deliver a score of 40 plus opening the batting in the game like this. A little bit more than Devon Conway at the moment, but I mean, I'm not going to, if Devon Conway's out there and he's the dude who's chosen, I'm not going to it's not going to be a lack of faith in a guy like that, particularly against a team like Afghanistan. It's just I think Ravindra might be slightly more suited to that. But other than that, I think 3-4-5 is pretty well sorted with Williamson, Mitchell, Phillips, in some order, some capacity. I would go Bracewell over Neesham. Curious to see whether they pick an extra bowler or if Mark Chapman's in there. I suspect it might be Chapman. And then with the bowlers, like it's just a matter of there's a little bit of like fitness and stuff aspect of there is like, do you want because you remember at the ODI World Cup they kept playing Ferguson because they just wanted to keep a steady first 11. They kept playing Ferguson up until he got injured, and it was like, well, you kind of knew that was going to happen at some point. You can rotate a little bit. Although I will say, like, do want to hammer home that point you made about one of the reasons the Blackcaps are so good and so consistent in these games is because in these tournaments is because they do always win the games they're expected to win. They don't have the banana peel performances, and part of that is because they take every game seriously, and they don't have the odd one where you just rotate everyone out because early in a tournament or whatever. It's like, let's get the points on the board first of all and take it, one day at a time. But yeah, I mean, I expect Trent Boulder's in there coming off the IPL. He should be pretty fresh and raring to go. What is a couple of those other guys, Ferguson, Southey, have just had fewer overs. Risa Henry probably as well. Like a little bit less of a workload recently, which maybe means there's some like build up process going on. But I don't know. I expect if there is, they've kind of taken care of that in the preparation leading into the World Cup rather than needing like games to settle. So, to be honest, I think the bowling lineup is built in a way where, because of the ability to play the extra spinner in these conditions, you have the freedom to rotate a little bit without weakening the team in a way that they haven't had at other tournaments. So I think that might be something we do see is just the ability to mix it up slightly. But yeah, I don't know. You'll see. I think Ferguson and Bolt are probably first 11 at this stage. And then it depends on if you want 3 spinners or 3 seamers. But that also might be a decision dependent on whether you take Neesham or Bracewell or maybe even both. There is a way you can get both of them in there. So it's nice. It's nice to have options like this where, because I can remember talking about tournaments before where it's like the Blackcaps don't really know their first 11. Who's going to open the batting? Like here we've got the same situation, but in a good way. Because this is like, well, this guy's in form and this guy's in form, or this guy's in form, but this guy's got runs on the board and we trust him with his experience in big tournaments. Either way seems like a good option. Whereas like the 2019 World Cup, as well as that ended up, they went into that being like, well, Colin Munro can't score a run and Henry Nicholls is not an opener, but we're going to try picking him as an opener. But no, we'll go back to Munro. No, we're going to drop him halfway through the group stage and flip over to Nicholls. Like, that's the worst. We've experienced that version of this debate. Here we've got the other side of that debate where it's like there's too many good players in form or with the right tournament experience to fit into a starting 11. And I am actually quite like, it's like the tournament starts when the first team is named, and the first 11 gets mentioned. There might, I'm not saying surprises, but there's definitely going to be intrigue about that because even that alone might tell us a few things about the Blackcaps. See their sort of tactics for this tournament in these conditions, which it's hard to predict. We can try predict it, but there's variables at play here, and that's always interesting when that's the case with the Blackcaps because, like you said before, they're very good at adapting to these types of situations.
I think it's Bolt and Ferguson then Santner, Sodhi, Bracewell. I think that's a pretty solid group of 5 bowlers. And if you need another bowling option, you can turn to Ravindra. You might turn to Glenn Phillips. Then, with that in mind, you might want to get Jimmy Neesham into the team because he adds an extra seam bowling option. And I'm confident Jimmy Neesham will bowl a death over at some stage in the tournament. It might be against Uganda. Yeah, it might be against Uganda or Papua New Guinea, but he will bowl a death over at some stage. So then if I've got my certified 5, my quintet, Bolt, Ferguson, Santner, Sodhi, Bracewell, then it's like, oh, Jimmy Neesham or Mark Chapman. And that's an interesting battle because Jimmy Neesham adds a bit of a bowling mix. He's very experienced in T20 competitions around the world. He's played in the CPL. But where is Mark Chapman successful?
Pakistan, mostly.
Pakistan, and that, they're quite similar conditions to the Caribbean. They're more similar than New Zealand to the Caribbean. So you can see an argument for Mark Chapman to be selected given his timing and the variety of shots he has as a lefty down the order. Jimmy Neesham's more of a pure slugger. Mark Chapman's got, flexible hands. He can manipulate the ball around as well as getting the power from his timing and his precision. Otherwise, you go Chapman and you take out one of the spinners, you inject Jimmy Neesham or you inject Tim Southee. I think the 5 I listed is a pretty solid bowling unit. Bolt, Ferguson, Santner, Sodhi, Bracewell. And then it's about whether Ravindra opens alongside Finn Allen, because if Ravindra doesn't open, he's either not playing or he's batting down the order, and there's not much room in that middle order. Like, we're trying to get Neesham, Bracewell, Phillips, Mitchell, Chapman into a few spots in that middle order, which is the strength of this team, but I don't see a spot for Ravindra in the middle order. So it's quite interesting there. I'm actually leaning to Neesham over Chapman at this stage right now.
Yeah, I kind of lean the other way, but I also think that just Neesham, especially if you're going to go extra spinners, Neesham's ability with the ball, particularly because he can bowl the 20th over. He can bowl the 20th over as well as anyone else in a team where death bowling probably is the major weakness. If it's not him, I expect probably Trent Bolt, but I don't know that Trent Bolt's, well, he's certainly not at his best at the end of the innings. He's at his best at the top of the innings, and I just like the idea of being able to give Trent Bolt 3 overs first up if he's really feeling it, which is risky if you're then taking away your 20th over bowler. So having Neesham in there it gives them that insurance. I guess you could also bring in Neesham alongside Bracewell and Chapman if you dropped Santner or more likely Sodhi, but I'd prefer to have the 2 spin dudes to take that sort of like 6 through 14 aspect of the innings. But this is what I'm saying about, like, they have options, they have variations, and they can go game to game, pitch to pitch as well with these things. Like, you can say this one's a little bit more suited to, it might be a bit of seam movement or something, or just less spin perhaps. So we're going to go with Neesham today. This one's a bit drier, and we reckon it's gonna. We reckon there's some grip on the surface, so we're gonna go Bracewell in a 3-prong spin attack with Ravindra in the team in case we need more overs. They have those options of being able to mix it up.
As we've said before, it's highly unlikely that Mark Chapman bowls, which makes him just a batter, pretty damn good fielder. So that's the Mark Chapman status update. We appear to have confirmation on the transfer wire that young Alex Paulsen is signing or has signed with Bournemouth. And this brings to fruition the Wellington Phoenix plan. And as fun as some of these players are to watch for the Wellington Phoenix, part of this Wellington Phoenix journey is you need to say goodbye to them. Like we're not gonna see these young players playing for the Phoenix for very long. You're not gonna get like Rufer. Well, he's not really young at this stage, but he's the type of player who sticks around for a while, holds it down for the Wellington Phoenix. But the young players you fall in love with, they're going to be gone within a few years. And you can look back in the history, Kakache, Sarpreet Singh, Ben Wayne, like those dudes have all emerged with the Wellington Phoenix. We as fans get an emotional attachment to them, then they leave. That is the Phoenix business model though, so we need to appreciate it. And they just move into the Flying Kiwis round. So it's no issue for us. We're just going to be following Alex Paulsen with Bournemouth. Same way we follow Kakache for Empoli. Same way we follow Ben Wayne wherever he is in the world. Which I think is England.
Plymouth Argyle.
Which is where Alex Paulsen's going to go now. So we're, like the qualities Kiwi footballers, there's some in the Scandinavian territories, there's some in other back blocks of Europe, but these dudes are getting moved straight to England now, which I think tells you the level of talent coming out of the Wellington Phoenix. But this is different to the Warriors. The Warriors, you can fall in love with a young player and you can think, well, this player is going to be in my life at the Warriors for the next 3 to 4 years before they outgrow their contract or before another team comes knocking. And then there's another junior that you can fall in love with and know they're going to be around. So slight nuances in how the junior pipelines for these teams operate. But we do have this Alex Paulsen move. And considering we talked about this last week, I think in the subscriber podcast, maybe a bit on the niche cast, my favorite thing about watching Alex Paulsen was his passing. His passing under pressure. And you're getting a few highlight montages of Alex Paulsen, his shot stopping. Like that's stuff that you can put in the highlight. You've got some clips of his penalty shootout exploits for New Zealand and age group footy, as well as I think it was the Aussie Cup, whatever it's called. Those are things you can put into a highlights package. Alex Paulsen, the goalie, he saves goals. You got to be an absolute footy freak to go in and somehow find, maybe on the Huddle profile, like full game replays and be able to whip out a Alex Paulsen passing highlights package. So if you're a Bournemouth fan, you're going to be expecting Alex Paulsen, really good shot stopper. I've seen him save a few penalties. Well, this dude, he's a really good goalie. And then suddenly he's going to be pulling the strings in a playmaking sense as the goalkeeper. So I've found that a fascinating thing. Like in this age, there's a lot of highlights packages, but the Alex Paulsen highlights package doesn't necessarily highlight his best attribute, which is passing and playing out from the back. Does that align with Bournemouth and how they play their football?
It doesn't seem to align with their current goalkeeper, who is Neto, who I think is Brazilian or Portuguese or something like that. But yeah, probably overall. Like I think a lot of clubs, even when they don't play that way, they like to think that they play that way. So they're going to be open to that. Pretty much every club. I always hear like West Ham are the best example of this, where they talk about the West Ham way. It's like and they always get like David Moyes. They got rid of him recently because they're like, he doesn't coach in the West Ham way. It's like I can't in my life remember a West Ham team that didn't play like lumpy English football. Like, what are we talking about here? The myth is so much greater than the reality. But that works in Alex Paulsen's favor. And yeah, with Bournemouth, that is going to be something where they look at him and think like, that's an enticing skill. We don't have that necessarily right now. We would like that. There's someone you can pass the ball back to and know that he's not going to freak out, like with the ball at his feet. Even when he's being pressed, he's not going to freak out. Like his composure is nuts. And I got some quotes in the newsletter this week from an interview that he did with the Wellington Phoenix. I think it was for a match program, like at the start of the season. And he talks about a few different things in there, which I thought was just so interesting. I just chucked the quote straight up there. One of them was talking about how he gets so composed on the ball is because his older brother, Adam Paulsen, is a New Zealand futsal international. So Alex has played a lot of indoor soccer alongside his brother through the years, where like it's just fast paced. There's a lot of you're always under pressure kind of thing, and he's just learnt to be composed from that small sided type stuff. I also thought it was really interesting when he talked about like how last season when he wasn't getting games, he used that as like not just motivation to like take his opportunity when it comes along, as a lot of players say, but he's sort of like, he said he used that as like, okay, well, I have this like window where I can just work on my game. Like, what are my weaknesses? How can I improve them so that by the time the opportunity comes around to play, I've like ironed that stuff out. I remember hearing, I think it must have been Ryan Thomas, someone like that was when he had his first injury at PSV. Ruud van Nistelrooy used to play for PSV, was around, I think, coaching the academy or team. So he ended up being their first team coach for a little while. I remember Thomas saying that he'd had a chat from Van Nistelrooy telling him, like, because he'd had a serious knee injury at one point in his career, right when he was about to sign with Manchester United. He had a serious knee injury, out for like 12 months, ended up coming back and signing with United afterwards. But at the time, he didn't know if he was going to get that opportunity to come around again. But he said he used that time off. He's like, this is the only time you're going to get as a professional where you can actually take a step back, analyze your career, and work out, like, what am I going to do next? Like, while you're injured, you don't have the ability to physically go out and train these things, as Paulsen did while he wasn't playing, but you can still mentally work out, like, okay, I need to make this run in this situation, or, I need to play with my head up more, or whatever it is. Paulsen used that to work on his aerial stuff, and he talked about being a short goalkeeper, like, and I thought, that's probably true. Like, he says he's about 6 foot or something like that. Maybe he's 21, 22. Maybe he's still at a little bit more growth than, I don't know. But I've never thought of him as being a particularly short goalie. I don't get that impression from him, even though I guess it's probably true. But I think part of that is because, in a very kind of like basketball way, I think he's long. I think he's got long arms, so he's able to, get high to jump up and make those punches, make those like aerial claims. But I don't know, that was a strange one to think about, that perspective of him. But also just to get the impression of a dude who works so diligently on his game and has the self-awareness to realize that this is something I can improve upon, considering he's been like a superstar prospect since the age of like 15, 16, whatever. Like, yeah, what is like a home run signing basically for whoever ends up, which it looks like is pretty much confirmed now to be Bournemouth. And there's no way he ends up back at Auckland FC. Like, I know there's the shared ownership there, but first of all, why would you sign a player like that and then loan him back to the league he's already dominated, and that's not progressing his career at all? And second of all, they just announced Michael Vowd, an international goalkeeper, as one of their first signings. Why would you do that if you were going to get Alex Paulsen as well? Like, why would you sign 2 top-level Kiwi goalkeepers? That just seems like a bit of a waste. I don't think Michael Vowd would be very happy about that situation if that's how it went. But third of all, and most importantly, there is actually a rule that you can't do that in the A-League, because when Manchester City bought Melbourne City, they did that a couple of times. Like, Anthony Caceres, I think, was the straw that broke the camel's back. They bought him from Central Coast, loaned him straight back to Melbourne City. So the A-League's like, well, I don't know that that's entirely fair, so let's change the rules and not let that happen again. So they actually legally could not loan him back to Auckland FC anyway. But also, it just wouldn't make sense from a footballing perspective. I actually think he's got a shot to be around with them in preseason. So I don't necessarily know that he will go on loan. I think he's far enough advanced and ready enough that he's not going to go in and be number 1 goalkeeper from day one. I find that baffling to comprehend, but it's possible if he has an amazing preseason. But which, by the way, might overlap with the Olympics, so that might be something there is a possibility now that he might not be available for that. But if he's not available, then oh well, Kay Sims, Henry Gray. This I think Scott Morris might still be within the realms. Like there's three other very good goalkeeping prospects who are ready to go. Like there's this great move from Alex Paulsen, great bit of scouting from Bournemouth, and he's just the type of player where you don't, wherever he goes, they're getting a bit of a bargain. I just fail to see he sees some weaknesses in his game. I don't really see very many weaknesses in his game. And I think when you got the mentality and the self-awareness of a dude like that, like he's going to be the best player that he's capable of being. Whether that's good enough to be a Premier League goalkeeper, we'll find out. But like, he's not going to be a wasted talent at any point. You're getting a bargain with a dude like that.
Why would a dude like that want to play against the Phoenix? That makes
why would he want to do that exactly
at all? Like, that just seems like some trauma popping back up in football fans' lives. Please update the Matthew Garbett story, because it looks like they've been having a jolly old time.
Yeah, a real jolly old time. This is such a ridiculous, 1 month ago, the odds you'd have gotten for picking NAC Breda to get promoted, minuscule. They were in pretty rotten form. They won one of their last 8 regular season games. They only qualified for the playoffs in 8th place by goal difference. There were three goal difference points ahead of the team directly below them. So they very, very, very nearly didn't even make the playoffs. And then just went on the most spectacular, bonkers footballing journey you could imagine to win those playoffs and get promoted to the Eredivisie. They played Roda JC in the first round. Roda themselves had only qualified for the playoffs by goal difference, missing out on automatic promotion the last round of the season, but they smoked them. Like they beat them, I think 3-1 in the first leg, and then beat them 5-0 in the away leg in a crazy game. Talked about that tie a little bit already, I think. And then the next one, they go up against FC Emmen. Okay, well, here's a team that's a little bit more stable, but doesn't matter. They drew the first leg, but then they won the away leg again, scored a couple early goals, and then just held on, And then they're up against Excelsior most recently, who are the team who finished 16th in the Eredivisie, top flight in Netherlands. They're the team whose place all these teams are competing to take for next season. They're in the playoffs with a chance to defend their place in the top flight. And Breda just go out and smoke them 6-2 in the first leg at home. Excelsior had 2 red cards, so it wasn't them at their very best, and a few of those goals came late on. Matt Garbett came off the bench and set up one of those goals. Puts them into the final game, 4-goal advantage, away from home though. Not against 9 men this time, so Excelsior are going to be a little bit of a trickier prospect. After 50 minutes, they're 4-0 down. So this insane journey takes another flip where suddenly they're 4-0 down after 50 minutes and the scores are tied on aggregate. They no longer have their big advantage, but they managed to score a goal after about an hour just before that, and then hold on desperately for the last half hour, which they did. They survived. They held on for a 7-6 aggregate victory over 180 minutes, and that is where the flares and the fireworks started going off, and they crowd went nuts. Party went long into the night, from what I understand, in Breda, because this is actually, Garbett joined them as a second-tier team, but this is a team that has quite a bit of history. They're one of the best supported clubs in the Netherlands, and they've spent the majority of their history in the top flight. Now they're back in the top flight. Garbett was a sub in all 6 of all 6 of these playoff games. So he wasn't like one of their key players, but I do think he's a player who, now that they're in the top flight, is someone who has a bit more scope to scale up to the higher level, because I think his international experience will help him playing at a quicker pace in a way that's maybe some of the other guys might have a couple first division battlers in there who might struggle with that, whereas Garbett will probably thrive with it. But either way, he's in the top division, so that's worth it anyway. Like, it's fine. Earn your place back, but earn your place back at a higher level. That's a worthy trade-off. They actually haven't won a game with him in the starting lineup since January, which is a crazy stat within this. But he has, in that time, he's scored and assisted in draws and defeats. He's come off the bench in victories and played a nice role. So no dramas there. But important thing is that Matt Garbett is going to the Eredivisie. He's been promoted. He's top flight of Dutch football. That's where he's bound.
Is he in the Olympics mix?
Yeah, he is. He's under 23, so he should be in that picture. Him, Marko Stamenic, Paulsen if he's available, Ben Old if he's available. There's a good chunk of these guys on top of you are allowed to also take 3 overage players. So Chris Woods hinted that he wants to be available for another Olympics swing. Maybe Sarpreet Singh probably, I would imagine, can do what he wants because his club don't seem to like him. So he can, he doesn't matter if he pisses them off by being available. He just wants some football. He can be available. Libby Kikache, maybe a Joe Bell. They've got some options in there. They've got good options, and it's a pretty strong under 23s base to start with as well. And Kylian Mbappe's not going to the Olympics as well. They named the French team. Thierry Henry's coaching the French team, the French under 23s, and he didn't pick Mbappe probably because there's a Euros coming up, so that would mean he gets 0 preseason. But I think also Real Madrid didn't want him to. So fine, fair enough. We'll just beat France without him instead. Kikache would have locked him down anyway. So.
Same with Shea Ali and Luka Doncic, I imagine.
Exactly.
Same battle. Breaking news. We have some fresh signings for Auckland FC, although I did see on our Twitter that you, with some help from a few of our followers, very trusted sources in the footballing community, we did predict Tommy Smith and Max Mata joining Auckland FC, and they are the latest signings for Auckland FC, both Kiwis from Aotearoa. So look, is that the first 6 players? Are they all from Aotearoa, or are they?
Yeah, all 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And it's funny because there's still these people like defending what the Breakers are doing. And it's like, yes, the NBL is an import league. Yes, it's basketball, so you always need a few imports. The Breakers have always had imports. That's fine. I'd also point out that throughout their successful period, they had a very solid, hearty crew of Kiwis, led by Mika Vikona, who won NBL championships, who formed an NBL dynasty, and every other professional sports team in New Zealand is leaning into Aotearoa talent, now updated with Auckland FC, who are primarily signing Kiwi footballers as the latest addition to professional football and professional franchise sport in Aotearoa. The Breakers are the anomaly here. The Breakers are the team who are not doing what the other teams are doing. And at the moment, Auckland FC haven't played a game of football, but the Warriors, the Phoenix, these other franchises are proven to be pretty successful. I don't need your, unless you've got some countering storylines, don't need you to pipe up because you've been big on this for a while, but I do want to reinforce your perspective with my observation that Auckland FC have just signed a bunch of Kiwis. They're not, like, they will sign overseas players, but their current roster management strategy as the latest New Zealand sports franchise appears to be big up Aotearoa.
Yeah, and that's what people probably wanted to see first up. Let me just fix my volume. That's a great way to get the fans on board, sign some players that they can relate to, national team experience, and 5 out of 6 counts. And it sounds like Jesse Randall might have played for the All Whites by the time he first plays for Auckland FC. There's talk of him because they've got the Nations Cup coming up, likely to be a little bit under strength there, just because some players can't do Nations Cup and then Olympics. That's a bit much to ask. You want to spread that out. And, there's opportunities that arise there. And we're coming into a situation where there's going to be because I thought about it from this perspective before. So it's about to be twice as hard to make a all-white squad from the Wellington Phoenix, because there's going to be a whole other team with as many New Zealanders, hopefully, or something close to it. It will take a little while before the Auckland FC, and hopefully they do go down this track, but it'll take a little while before they can have an academy system that matches what the Phoenix are doing. But their top team will have something close to as many New Zealanders who are in like all whites contention, playing at the exact same level. So that's going to be that's all just depth, isn't it, for the national team? That's what you want. And really, like, the same thing as what we're saying about Alex Paulsen. Like, it's pretty hard to be a consistent all-white selection from the A-League anyway. Like, you kind of got to go a little bit higher if you want to be guaranteed of that stuff. Otherwise, either that'll be a veteran with who offers something a little bit different to a young team, like maybe Tommy Smith or Costa Barbarouses falls in that category as well, though he's had a spectacular year, and maybe that's just what it's going to take from now on. Even Alex Rufer is not in a full-strength all-white squad. Like, if Joe Bell's there, Marko Stamenic is there, Alex Rufer is not. Someone is missing, sure, but like, he's just had a fantastic season with the Phoenix. Not necessarily enough. So this is great depth for the All Whites. And yeah, just on that, the basketball comparison. Do you know what Mika Vakona is up to lately? Have you caught that? Have you caught that drift, or what his current day job is?
It's funny you ask, because I did actually have a Wikipedia search to make sure he was part of that Breakers dynasty, and on Wikipedia, it said he was an assistant coach somewhere, I think in Queensland, unless there's been some update.
He was for a while, I think, an assistant with Brisbane, where he was something like that. He finished off his career with there. Now, there has been an update. His current thing for the last couple of years, he's been the general manager of the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, who won the NBL this season. You know, the champions. He's not just orchestrated championship caliber teams as a player, but now he's doing it as a front office fellow as well. So I think there's a fellow who is an example worth following. And yeah, Breakers still haven't retired his jersey, which I find particularly notable. Saying that for like 5 years still hasn't happened. So what do you know?
Didn't see that anywhere. That's pretty notable. Mika Vakona, Kiwi basketball legend, just took up a GM gig and won the NBL. That seems pretty damn impressive. Yeah. And you can add that on top of the coaches who do really well, the assistant coaches coming out of Aotearoa, and all the basketball talent across the various levels.
Ross McMahon's Tall Blacks assistant for Pero Cameron's staff is also a player development coach at the Boston Celtics, who are about to start an NBA Finals gig as well. Like that's player development with the Boston Celtics. That's not like G League coaching. That's like Jaylen Brown. Here's how you're gonna fix that little kink in your jumper or whatever. You know, that's Ross McMahon's Tall Blacks assistant. I think was born in America, but spent a lot of his schooling and most of his coaching as well in New Zealand. Grew up in Waiheke Island, I believe. And there you go. He's not going to win an NBA championship because I am a Dallas Mavericks fan, so I'm not going to say that. But he might tie it down. Well, I'll tell you this. He's getting some good Luka Doncic scouting, isn't he?
Yeah.
Head of the Tall Black stuff.
Damn Skippy hears. We're a bit all over the show. We're weaving between basketball and football, but we were talking about Auckland FC, so they've made a few signings. Big up to them. Love and Aotearoa. And I am going to keep putting this out there. I'm fizzing to see this rivalry in action. I'm fizzing to see Auckland FC versus Wellington Phoenix. It's going to be awesome. But we've also got football Ferns games. They've lost 2 games against Japan. We won't worry about the nitty-gritty. I did see Millie Clegg scored a goal, which is good to see, because she just moved to the NWUSL, where Macy Fraser is. Macy Fraser wasn't playing in the series. But just as we need to touch on a few topics here as we finish the podcast, so I'll try and boil it down to a key point. Obviously, we know the football Ferns, they were underdogs heading into the series. They're playing against higher ranked teams, so we're not necessarily expecting a win, but and to be honest, it was a bit of a shambolic preparation with Klimkova not touring with the team. Is there any good or bad major takeaway from what you saw from the football Ferns in this 2-game stint against Japan?
Well, part of the reason for this tour existing in the first place is they just had to get used to playing the world's best teams again ahead of the Olympics, where they got a really tough group. So in that light, I think it was a very good lesson that they learned specifically in the first game, but then it was still there in the second game, where like they actually defended really well in the first half of the first game. And then like Michaela Foster didn't track a runner, and nobody sort of got no. I think like Rebecca Stott or whoever it was, centre back, didn't close out that runner quick enough when they got to the box, and there's a cutback and there's a goal right before halftime, like right as they're about to take it to halftime, and then trouble. And then someone wasn't marking at the back post where they were supposed to be straight after halftime, and they concede an open header and they lose 2-0. Like there's little moments where it's the Wellington Phoenix thing in the against Melbourne Victory as well. It's like you can defend brilliantly for 120 minutes, but if you lapse once against a really good team, they punish you and you suffer as a result. Good reminder for the football Ferns to remember that, because they are capable of putting 90 minutes of really good defense together. Didn't get that a lot in the second game, but the second game was a bit weird. Like first half was outstanding. They were great in the first half. They barely gave Japan a chance, and they actually created a couple of things themselves, including spectacular Millie Clegg goal. The trademark Millie Clegg move as well is like drift out to the left to collect it, cut inside, shoot. Normally she goes far post, kills it inside. This time she just smashed it near post. Bit of variety there. Maybe she's picked up something there already in racing Louisville, but just a fantastic goal. And then like 2 minutes later, she got the ball in a similar situation and did something different, where she cut back and crossed beautifully towards the far post. And Grace Jale probably should have got a touch on it, but didn't. And at that point, I'm like, well, Millie Clegg's a first 11 player now. We've reached that point. It might have got there slightly earlier had she not gotten injured for Western Sydney. We weren't there quite yet at the World Cup. It was just a little too early, but I think we're there now. And she just offered even in a game where they ended up losing 4-1, offered such a bright spark in that starting lineup of creativity. And we still haven't seen the football Ferns with Millie Clegg and Macy Fraser on the field at the same time. Like that's where the hope lies, attacking wise. Defensively, they just have to be more sound than they were. But for large parts, they were really good, and they were 1-0 up in the second game against Japan. Then Japan make 3 halftime subs. Those halftime subs combined for 3 goals, plus someone else scored 1 as well. They lose 4-1. Some mistakes in there. They got punished. Japan, which is way too good in the second half. Woke a sleeping beast there, unfortunately, but there are some positives there, and I think Millie Clegg's presence is the overwhelming main one there. Like there's an attacker we can build around moving forward.
Beauty. So shout out Millie Clegg. Sounds like the football Ferns just holding steady with where they're at right now, which, to be honest, given the circumstance surrounding the coach and whatever's happening on the periphery of this team, it's not the worst result, especially when you do put a young player like Millie Clegg into the spotlight and let her shine a wee bit. NRL footy. The one thing I want to say about the Warriors. So we've talked a lot about the Warriors, wins over the Panthers, then the Dolphins. The Warriors in New South Wales Cup, obviously in NRL, the Warriors had a bye, so they had a good win there. This weekend in New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg, they had 2 wins over the Roosters. So the Warriors are undefeated against the Panthers in the NRL New South Wales Cup and Jersey Flegg. That's pretty good. They are not undefeated against the Roosters, because the Roosters had a Jersey Flegg win and I think a New South Wales Cup win a few weeks ago. No, they just had a Jersey Flegg win a few weeks ago. So the Warriors have beat the Roosters in New South Wales Cup twice over the past month or so, and they had a win in Jersey Flegg. During this period where the Warriors have won against the Panthers and the Dolphins with a squad that has been ravaged by injury, and they are severely under the pump as far as their depth being tested, while that is happening at the NRL level. And of course, if your depth is being tested at the NRL level, your depth is being tested at the New South Wales Cup level, and it's being tested at the under-21 level. Here are the Warriors' recent results in New South Wales Cup. during this, not like it's longer than 2 weeks, so it's longer than this 2 week period, but they had a 22-all draw against the Panthers, 12-7 win over the Knights, 26-20 win over the Roosters, 22-10 over the Panthers. They lost to the Bears, 22-16, and then they defeated the Roosters, 24-16. During this time, the Jersey Flegg Warriors have started winning games as well. Win over the Dragons, win over the Panthers, draw with the Knights, lost to the Roosters, win over the Storm, win against the Roosters. And this is notable because there's not many losses in the last few weeks for the Warriors, New South Wales Cup, and Jersey Flegg team. New South Wales Cup team, they won 2 of their first 6 games. Then they went win, draw, win, 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 loss, win. Jersey Flegg, they lost their first 6 games. Now they are undefeated in their next 6 games, while the NRL team has had their squad ravaged by injury. And this coincides with a lot of young players playing New South Wales Cup. Talked about it before. Roughly 11 players in the New South Wales Cup team are under 21s. So they're winning consistently in the New South Wales Cup with a team that primarily consists of players under the age of 21 years old. The Jersey Flegg Warriors have 5 wins and a draw with a team that is primarily under 19 years old. Like, this is pretty damn impressive for the Warriors pipeline. And the biggest nugget, the thing I want to share here is that while the Warriors defeated the Panthers and the Dolphins in a fantastic example of the depth at the Warriors, reserve grade and under 21s have also been winning. So that is a fantastic sign for the Warriors pipeline. Your Dragons defeated the Panthers, and that was a pretty, shout out the Dragons, they were good. Panthers weren't so good, but we did have the debut of Preston Ricky. And I was watching the Jersey presentation. Apparently James Fisher-Harris didn't know who Preston Ricky was prior to Ricky joining the Panthers, even though they're both from the Hokianga region. So they would have like met up and like rolled through their whakapapa, their whānau, and like drawn some connections and whatnot. But apparently they didn't know of each other before Ricky moved to the Panthers. And he played 26 minutes off the bench. Fisher-Harris played 72 minutes against the Dragons. 49 tackles at 98%. That's pretty damn useful from Fisher-Harris, but that's what he does. Preston Ricky, 5 runs, 52 meters, and 19 tackles at 83%. Preston Ricky, what's his yarn? He's from up north, went to school at Mount Albert Grammar, also played league for Mount Albert, and that was when he was in the Warriors system. He spent a long time in the Warriors system. He was playing New South Wales Cup back in 2018. Played a few years in New South Wales Cup, started the New South Wales Cup round 1 in 2020 before the pandemic, and then he was still with the Warriors. He went over to play for Redcliffe and Queensland Cup. Then the Panthers signed him and Dayon Amatuanai, who was from like the Horowhenua Manawatu area. The Panthers signed those two from the Redcliffe Warriors. Amatuanai is still in New South Wales Cup, grinding through that Panthers system, and Ricky had to... It's like this thing where you've got to spend a lot of time in New South Wales Cup to really adjust to how the Panthers play their footy. So there's a very slow development process there at the Panthers, and Ricky just went through that process, came out the other side. Now he's an NRL player. He is a bit older. I think he's 26 years old, but he's pretty similar to Fisher-Harris, to be honest. And I think he is someone who can step up to help fill the void left by Fisher-Harris when he departs next season to join the Warriors. Panthers, you've got Amatuanai in New South Wales Cup. Francis Manulelua, he's a Papatoetoe junior. He scored a try on the weekend for the Jersey Flegg team. And the Panthers also have the Vahaakolo Fafita brothers. I think it's Josiah and Jodeci. They are all, I think they're from Otahuhu, and they are in the Panthers system as well. So the Panthers do have some Kiwi NRL juniors and Kiwi NRL talent rising through their pipeline. Another fun game this weekend. Obviously, the Eels had a big win. Fantastic Dylan Brown performance. Preston Ricky, he's from Northland. Fisher Harris, he's from Northland. Dylan Brown, he's from Northland. And Wiremu Greg came back from the abyss. He was playing for the Eels. He was pretty impressive. I think he was starting prop in there, went over the Sharks. So Mitchell Moses is back. Clint Gutherson's back. That's how the Eels get back into winning ways. But it's Wiremu Greg, let's be honest, back starting at prop. So big weekend for Northland Rugby League. Preston Ricky debut, Wiremu Greg back in the NRL, Dylan Brown and Fisher Harris holding it down as elite NRL players. Dolphins versus Raiders was another fantastic game. And I do want to highlight some young players in a jiffy, but Fisher Harris, Dylan Brown is young, but he's played a lot of footy. And then you've got Joey Tarpanay, who played 62 minutes of a 88-minute Golden Point extravaganza between the Raiders and the Dolphins. Tarpanay, 23 runs. He was busy. 51 tackles at 96%. Fantastic performance from Joey Tarpanay, and also a fantastic performance from Jordan Rapana from Wellington. He was at fullback. He kicked the winning field goal. Does a bit of everything. It's hard not to have Rapana as one of your favourite Aotearoa Kiwi-NRL players. Like, I feel like he's always overlooked. But he is fullback, wing, centre. You could put him at prop. You could put him anywhere and he'll do a job for you. And if the Raiders are playing well, you know, Matthew Tomoko, young gun, he's playing well. 20 runs for 200 metres. That's 10 metres per run on 20 runs, which is absolutely beastly. And I did hear there was a Sebastian Chris, hearty Aotearoa Kiwis representative. I think him and Xavier Savage, they're from the northern areas, Torres Strait up in Australia, I think, and they had a death in their family. So from the Aotearoa Kiwis perspective, big ups to them. Also, Jeremy Marshall-King. Got to remind everyone, Kiwis beat Australia last year with Kieran Foran and Fa'amanu Brown as the dummy halves. Now we've got Jeremy Marshall-King just playing consistent footy every single week. At hooker for the Dolphins, bit of Brandon Smith as well. So, like, the Kiwis are pretty sorted for hooker. They beat Australia without Marshall-King and Brandon Smith. Right now, Marshall-King and Brandon Smith are playing NRL footy every week, fit, available, and among the best hookers in the NRL. As far as some of these youngsters go, it doesn't get much better. Obviously, Tomoko was fantastic. Connolly Lemuelu, second rower for the Dolphins from Otahuhu, he was pretty good. But there was a game, Roosters versus Cowboys, where it was Griffin Neame from Greymouth versus Nofahu White. He's a Bay Roskell junior in Auckland, went to Kelston Boys High School. Whew. They were just going at it in the middle. And it's hard not to look at this like bye-round footy, or we have 5 or 6 games. You had Leo Thompson with the Knights, one of the few Knights to actually show up and play some rugby league in their loss against the Bulldogs. And aside from the Bulldogs playing without, they might have had, no, I don't think they had Pawasa Masili Glenora Jr. from Auckland. Let me make sure of that. Yeah, no Fa'amasili. So that means, aside from the Bulldogs, their win, because they have no Kiwi NRL players, big week for the Kiwi NRL lads, and especially the youngsters playing at a high level. So impressive. Satili Tupanuia came back with a pretty impressive performance for the Roosters. Wiremu Greg for the Eels, Dylan Brown for the Eels, Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Even got a bit of Makahisi Makatoa So Brad Arthur's been given the flick, and now Makatoa, Wiremu Greg, they're back in the mix for the Eels, which is good to see. Loved it. Funky round of Kiwi-NRL footy in the NRL, and of course Wednesday, but a state of origin, but we'll be previewing the Warriors game next week and all Kiwi-NRL footy on our subscriber podcast this week. Recording on Thursday, the Warriors are away to the Cowboys. Cowboys just had that win over the Roosters.
Love it, love it. You did miss one dude though. My boy Raymond. Everybody loves Raymond. Raymond Faitala-Mariner was like, he was massive for the Dragons in that win against the Panthers. Because that was such a weird game, because the other week I gave up on the Dragons halfway through the second half against the Sharks, where they just got absolutely like capitulated in the second half, having been, I think, winning at halftime, ended up losing by like 30, 40 points. This week, they were losing 10-0 to the Panthers at halftime, and it's like, well, I don't see how they're going to get back into this game. Panthers aren't even playing well, and they're just controlling things. But then the Dragons did get back into it, had a spectacular second half, won 22-10. And amongst that, you had Raymond Faitala-Mariner with like 170-odd meters off, I think it was 15 carries, like better than 10 meters a carry. 11 tackle breaks, an offload, 45 out of 47 tackles made, 96% tackle success, and he scored a try. It apparently is his first try in the NRL for 4 years. So shout out to Raymond Faitala-Mariner, because that was a long time in coming, but he absolutely deserved that. Like that was a spectacular performance from him. And it's those aren't empty numbers. That was in a comeback victory where the second half required a lot of very physical rugby league from the Dragons, and he was like borderline the main guy in amongst that, but at least one of the front line and turning that game around. He had a great performance.
The Otahuhu cartel for the Dragons. Yeah. Big weekend, because Christian Tuipulotu, he scored a try in New South Wales Cup as well. As you said, Faitala-Mariner, 15 runs, 171 metres, well over 10 metres per run. But then you had also Ben Murdoch-Masila coming off the bench. Fantastic impact, 23 minutes, 7 runs for 84 metres. So that's well over 10 metres per run as well. So the
12.
Otahuhu lads were on fire for the Dragons. Unfortunately, they won without Fa'amanu Brown. Fa'amanu Brown was 18th man. I do want to put some shade on the Bulldogs, because there's a lot of like Seraldo, the players I had last year didn't, they weren't doing the mahi. But the Bulldogs are winning with the players that he wants and the players that he are doing the mahi, and no Kiwi-NRL lads. So shout out to Seraldo and the Bulldogs. They're winning.
He's a racist.
Easy on. The Bulldogs are winning, and they're winning without Kiwi-NRL lads, so I can't put too much shade on them. But aside from, he's definitely not racist, because there's many different cultures in that Bulldogs team, just not necessarily Kiwi-NRL juniors, which is not a race. But it is a different breed of folks. Like we're a different breed, us Kiwi-NRL geezers. I'm not a Kiwi-NRL player. I'm a Kiwi-NRL geezer, and we'll welcome everyone. The Kiwi-NRL geezers, players, fans, coaches, staff, everyone. What was my point? My point was Faitala-Mariner was fantastic, and he was with the Bulldogs. He wasn't good enough to be the Bulldogs after being made the captain. So Seraldo had issues with the culture, but he made him captain. Then he flicked him out as captain, and then Faitala-Mariner went absolutely bonkers against the Panthers, as you reminded me. So shout out Faitala-Mariner and shout out Otahuhu, because you do have the Otahuhu cartel of the Dragons, and that is a notable pocket. Like shout out Northland, pretty impressive weekend of footy for Northland. But if you're from Otahuhu, you'll be hoping Christian Tuipulotu gets into that starting team at some point, although he might struggle with Sione Finau and Matthew Fiangai on the wings doing a good job there. Let's touch on some NBL just quickly. So the ladder: Tuatara 12-2, Canterbury Rams 10-2, Taranaki 9-3, Wellington 8-4, Franklin 8-4. My question to you, though, and this will set up our NBL discussion as we wind up the podcast. What do you think of my starting five of Aotearoa NBL players? Taylor Britt from Canterbury. Corey Webster, Auckland Tuatara. Hiram Harris, Wellington Saints. Rob Lowe, Auckland Tuatara. And Sam Timmins, who I think's with Franklin. That's my starting five of Aotearoa players. Who have I missed? Who have I overlooked? What do you reckon?
I like it. And I mean, the beauty of it is I could probably name a unique five with five separate players that would also feel just as good, because there are some high quality, international caliber players doing their thing. I mean, the two names that pop off the top.
Liafa?
Yeah, okay. Liafa was the first one I was going to say. It should be up there, and I would put Tom Vodanovic in there as well. We count inside Webster. He was there, and then he's not there at the moment. Maybe we'll leave him out just because he hasn't quite hit the criteria for games played. I need another big man in there. I do like Callum McRae. I do think I think he had like 16 and 18 or something on the weekend in a losing effort, because it's always a losing effort for Southland, but I think that buries his impact a little bit. Actually drop him and have Toby Smith-Milner, because he's hitting 3 points for fun. He hit 7 in the first half for the Saints, also in a losing effort. And then Liafa scored like 19 points in the fourth quarter. That was a great game. That was Auckland versus Wellington at the same time as the Dragons-Panthers game as well. So that was a fun Saturday night. I need another wing/shooter, maybe some experience in there from Ethan Rusbatch, just having a solid season for Franklin, and probably another guard. Where would I go with that? I don't know.
Tarangi?
Yeah, Ruben Tarangi could chuck in there as an extra. He could play shooting guard in the.
He's got to be in one of the teams, to be honest. He's got to be in.
I think he should be in the Breakers. I was looking at because I did this in the newsletter on Friday, because I realized it's one thing to say the Breakers don't sign enough New Zealanders. It's another thing to be like, well, here are the New Zealanders they should sign, like a bit of money where your mouth is kind of thing, right? And I thought, well, what are they missing the most from the Kiwi crew they had last year? I thought, well, just having Abercrombie's steady presence as someone who ties them to their championship years, veteran, can hit his shots. Tarangi's shooting is pretty sketchy these days, but he does everything else extremely well. And as a Tall Blacks captain, was around when they were winning championships, I'm pretty sure, at least he would have come close to overlapping with that. He ties them into some of their history anyway as a former player, and he's a free agent right now. Like, if you need that, you got a new coach coming in, what more could you ask for than someone with that level of experience and guidance, who was beloved at Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. They were always putting him forward in those kind of situations, even though statistically wasn't necessarily a great fit for them, particularly by last year. They saw the intangibles. It's like, well, that's what the Breakers need right now, is some dude who has the leadership credentials and intangibles. So I think he's right there available. But I expect they'll sign an Australian or 18-year-old Lithuanian or something instead. But yeah, I'll chuck him in the five for sure. And then we got two all-star Kiwi teams that would actually be fantastic.
Yeah, surely Ruben Tarangi's got to be in your top 10 for Kiwi NBL players. So he's in there. So we've got my team, Hiram Harris. Well, it's you selected from the leftovers, so it's not necessarily two teams going against each other. I just got in first, and you had to name the rest of them. My team was Hiram Harris, Taylor Britt, Corey Webster, Rob Lowe, Sam Timmins. Not to be confused with Sean Timmins, who I think was a Dragons player, a Steelers player maybe, had a State of Origin drop kick maybe at some time. Your team, Isaiah Liafa, Tom Vodanovic, Tohi Smith-Milner, Ethan Rusbatch, Ruben Tarangi.
Okay. And I mean, that Jordan Ngatai is still available. Work on the third one. We can bring in Ty Webster for that one because we'll say, you know, lower the thing. Carlin Davison's solid. Bloody both of the Cameron brothers, but Flynn Cameron, and we'll chuck Flynn and Tobias in that team as well. There you go.
Well, so
and Callum McRae, because I didn't pick I don't know if that was 4 or 5, but I didn't
Ty
pick a big man
Webster, Davison, Camerons. Who was the other one?
We'll have to drop Toby. Keep Flynn Cameron, chuck in Jordan Ngatai and Callum McRae.
Righto.
That's not bad for a bit of spontaneous selections.
The Cameron brothers can just play like
they're one person.
Yeah, they
pretend they're Siamese twins.
They play a game of Uno, and the winner gets selection in our third tier New Zealand NBL All Stars. So shout out to that game of Uno to determine the winner. Right. That is the Niche Cast. Big up yourself. We appreciate your support here with us as we have a little chinwag, a little yarn about Aotearoa sport. Check out our website, theniche-case.com. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, like the video. Drop us a comment if you feel like you want to as well. And of course, the Patreon whānau is there if you do want to join up. Get a bonus podcast every week and support us straight up the guts. We appreciate it. Big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Cha-cha.